privileged this evening to have several guest speakers here tonight. I say several, couple. That's a several of me. Commissioner Joe Short will be doing a short presentation, and we have Dale Arnold here as well. He's the Director of Energy Development at Ohio Farm Bureau, and we also have Roy Norman. He's the organizational director at Farm Bureau. So they'll each come up here in a little bit and speak. I think we'll start with Joe first, and then Roy and Dale. So if everybody will stand, and we'll do the pledge, say the pledge, and then we'll get our meeting started. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Also, I was reminded that we haven't introduced ourselves since the very first meeting, and so there's some new people who have been here. I am Brad Short, German Township trustee. Hi, Dean. To my left is Joe. His father would be Joe Short, but this is his son AJ Short. And then we have to my right Jason Purcell, or Jay. Jeff Kressel's our fiscal officer, and I can't forget Josh. He's hiding. Raise your hand, Josh. Jeff. Josh and Jeff are road crew. They keep your roads the way in the condition they are in. And then also we have Bob Apter, our cemetery sexton. Bob, raise your hand. Thank you, Bob. We need to do anything about any cemetery in the township, that's your guy. So, Doug Hograve. Oh yes, Doug Hograve. Are you here? Thought I saw you. Way in the back. Doug Hograve, our zoning inspector. So, yeah, did I leave anybody out? Forget anyone? All right, Mr. Joe Short, you want to come take the floor?
Thank you, sir. You bet. First of all, I want to say this is really impressive. Just the community that's come out, but also what the township trustees are doing. It's not just a meeting. They've been providing education, bringing in speakers like Dale Arnold. I just think this is fantastic. This does not happen in most townships, so you guys really need to, you should really be proud of the trustees that you have. I'm going to speak briefly on property taxes. We have a crowd assembled. Brett Kolb, the Fulton County auditor, was in and spoke with us. He can't be here this evening, so he pointed to me and said, Short, you're going to do it. So, all right. We've all heard a lot about property taxes, and I guess the most important thing is people think property taxes. So my property, I'm getting taxed on my property or the value of my property. It's really a service that you have already voted on. It's a fee that's attached to your property for the cost basis. So what that means is, I'm going to use public schools. We have voted on the public schools to say, yes, we want to pass this millage. They attach it to the property, and that's the cost basis that, in this case, Archbold schools would get. And at this point, and these are the property taxes for 24, which was collected in 25, the Archbold school system has collected $8,753,243. We've already approved that, and it's attached to our taxes of our home. So when people go, oh, that's your property taxes, it's really a service tax, and it just doesn't have to deal with the schools. Let me tell you what the property tax and what the ramifications are of people saying no. Oh, by the way, I'll start with this. I was at a commissioners conference in Columbus, and there were two gentlemen who have been pushing this, abolish property taxes. They were at the very front, they were speaking, and a commissioner was one of those who had an opportunity to speak. And he went to them and said, all right, so you want to blow up or abolish our property taxes. What about the services that you're going to destroy? And their comment was, that's not my problem, that's your problem. This is the answer that they have. It's going to be put in our laps. It's going to be put in front of Township Trustees' laps, in front of the school board, the village of Archbold. This is not what people think it's about. So I spoke with Brett Cole and I said, hey Brett, if you could just let me know the mandated services. This is what the state says we have to provide. So if the property taxes are abolished, so goes these. Starts with children's services. Each county is required to have public children's service agency. We've budgeted $500,000 for that for this next year. Public assistance, our mandated share, $275,000. Veteran services, the people that have offered their life for our country, we provide funding for those people and services, $710,000. The Bureau of Children with Medical Handicaps, $153,000. Ohio State University Extension. I mean, the farmers in this room, they use the extension all the time. $300,000. Agricultural societies, we provide about $5,000. The dog warden, maybe you've not had to use it, but I know our dog warden very well, and how many times has he had to go to, I'm going to say drug homes, where they have to get specific dogs out of these homes, and they're first in before the sheriff's department. We provide $60,000 for that. Emergency management, so when there are situations throughout the county that require it, I'll say one of them, the EIA was involved. We had a situation with Bunting, Bering, and Delta that we were demolishing a building, and there were elevated lead levels. EMA was there to provide assistance to the people of Delta. Board of Elections. Oh yeah, we have elections. That's almost $500,000 that we provide. When I say we, I don't mean us, I mean all of us. County Engineer's Office, we have $33,500. That's just from us. Yes, there's road taxes from gasoline and things like that. This is the interesting one. The legal system, our courts, our common pleas court, over $1 million comes from your taxpayer dollars. Probate and juvenile, $645,000. Clerk of courts, you ever get your titles done? How do you think they get paid? $332,000. Prosecutor, $970,000. The Juvenile Detention Center, $500,000. So when the youth get in trouble and the judge says, you have to go to the Juvenile Detention Center, they now are wards of the county. We have to take care of them to the tune of $500,000. CCNO, the adults that get in trouble, that's $1.5 million. And then the Sheriff's Department. Oh yeah, I don't want to forget them. You call 911. They get over $3,700,000. I just wanted to give a little rundown. Go ahead, vote no to abolish the taxes. Don't call any of these services. These are mandated by the state for us to provide. There's not going to be any money to do this. Call 911. Somebody needs emergency medical services. When you call, make sure you have your credit card. When somebody's laying on the floor, they're going to say, okay, MasterCard or is it Visa? It's Discover. We don't take that one. I'm joking. But, you know, how are these services going to be paid for? These are things that that I don't think people are thinking about, because it's really a service-based fee that's attached to your property. So just one thing, or a couple things to think about. In Fulton County, the property taxes, the service taxes that are collected is over $74 million. Property taxes, I hate that, but it's really service tax. But the property taxes, we know it today, stay here in Fulton County. It doesn't go to the state. It goes right back to Fulton County and gets distributed to the residents of Fulton County. The word is, okay, say this gets abolished. How are we going to fund anything? Well, they say it'll be sales tax. They're talking a tune of 20% sales tax. Think about that. You buy a car, the sales tax is kind of a factor. It's $5,000, for instance. That's at 7.25%. That's what we now have. If it's at 20%, you're talking $15,000. It's huge. And yes, okay, you can go to Michigan or you can go to Indiana and buy it. Doesn't matter, because the sales tax is effective in the county in which you live in. So these are things to think about. German Township, I'm just gonna say a couple things. I worked with Josh and Slim. Those are great guys. These guys work. They don't think twice. It's the worst weather ever. They're out there plowing snow, working on ditches, drainage tiles. They're awesome. If this gets shot down, if the property tax goes away, that's $1.1 million that these 3 trustees will not have to work with. I don't know if you want your snow plowed or not. Think about it. Municipalities, Archbold, over $850,000. The school, as I said, $8.7 million, that's Archbold. And then the library, that gets funded also, over $230,000. So when people think about property tax, it's not, it is your property, but it's the services that we have already all voted on to be okay with it. Because that's when they say it's going to be $15 per $100,000 of value on your home. That way you know how much that costs. So, yes, this is what I asked Brett Kolb to put together. I also want to thank Mr. John Trudell. Thank you. He brought some information in for me earlier also. Brad Short said it was going to speak for a short period of time. I'm a politician. That never happens, so I didn't think I'd go into all that. But I just want to say thank you again for listening. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask. But again, I just want to reiterate, you have 3 awesome township trustees, and I'm not saying it because one of them's my son. I'm saying it because I've been to many, many, many trustees meetings, and this is just the most informational township trustees meetings that have been going on for the last 2 and 3 months. Pretty incredible. So you guys are very fortunate.
Thanks, Bill.
Roy?
Roy? Thank you very much for the Township Trustees for allowing us to come and talk tonight. To follow up on Commissioner Short, I have a limited number of packets that have question and answer sheets about data centers, as well as property tax concerns as well, if you want to see me after the meeting. But you're here tonight. Thank you for giving me the chance to introduce Dale. So our office is in Pettisville for Fulton, Henry, Williams, and Defiance counties. And anytime there's an issue that pops up, Corey, I saw Corey in the back. He called me several weeks ago, gave me a heads up on this issue, and immediately calls go out to Dale. Whether it's natural gas lines, we're dealing with a lot of fiber optic complaints now from our members, especially in Henry County. Whether it's solar fields, industry, data centers, and whatnot. We have resource people at the Ohio Farm Bureau that can talk to our members and answer questions. So Dale comes to us tonight from all the way from Knox County. He and his family have been involved in agriculture since the 1820s. Dale is what we call the Director of Energy, Utility, and Local Government Policy for the Ohio Farm Bureau. For close to 4 decades, he has managed technical assistance projects addressing energy, generation, transmission, and distribution issues, as well as associated industrial development in rural neighborhoods. Dale works with utilities, energy service providers, regulators, local governments, and community stakeholders to identify and include quality of life benefits and stipulations on power siting proceedings at state and federal levels. Dale has authored the Farm Bureau policy papers advocating a diversified energy portfolio using domestic fossil resources and renewable and nuclear technologies. So would you give a Fulton County welcome to Dale?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? I have them like that here. Can you hear me? Okay, good. This is me. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. Here's the rules. I'm going to start talking and start getting on a roll. I also walk around quite a bit because I don't like to be a stationary target. But no, I'm going to start talking. I've got a presentation for you. Want to hold off for any questions until after I'm done with the presentation. After the presentation is done, I'll be here as long as possible, as long as you want to answer questions. And I'll also say this. That'll also be the last slide. But this is me. That's my phone number. That's also my email address. Because I'm going to tell you this. This is the start of a conversation. I don't want you to drink from a fire hose. A lot of things are happening. I'm going to try to give you as much information right now to make you dangerous, which is okay. Some of your Township trustees saw this presentation I did in Bowling Green last week. I'm doing it here tonight. I'm going to be in several other places doing this for their counterparts in other counties all over the place. But that's me. If you have any question whatsoever, you give me a call and we will continue that conversation. Case in point, I'll tell you this. I was sitting in my house in Newark about 9:30 in the evening about 6 weeks ago, and my cell phone rang, and I looked at the number that looked like my son Max, so I answered and said, "Hello, what you doing?" And this voice on the other end gasped for air. I said, "What's up? Hey, are you there?" He said, "Oh my God, you're still alive." I said, "Pardon me?" He said, "Oh, wait, Mr. Arnold, I met you about 15 years ago at United High School in Uniontown in Columbiana County." And I said, "Oh, and Shuts Oil and Gas Leases." He said, "Do you remember that?" And I went, what the heck? I said, "Yes." And he said, "If you ever had a question, to give you a call." Well, I got a question. It took me an hour and a half to find that card for you. And I thought, I just wanted to see if your phone number was still active, and I was just going to leave you a message. And I said, "Well, it's only 9:30 on Friday. I really don't have anything else to do. What's your question?" And we talked for an hour and a half. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to do that when you call at 9:30 on a Friday, but that gives you some idea about some of the stuff I do. Let's continue the conversation. A number of things are happening. I want you to see this. You're seeing a lot of things happening with energy infrastructure. And each one of those little pictures in that montage is something happening right now, someplace in the state of Ohio. You're working with a lot of folks basically on AI, artificial intelligence, and mega data centers. You've worked on pipelines. Some of you, we worked on transmission line casework basically about a year or so ago. Some of you, solar projects have gotten to be kind of big. Questions, details with regard to that. How do I get involved in this particular process? Where do I find accurate information? Welcome to my world. That's what I do. We have members who are involved in oil and gas production. We have members who are involved in battery backup systems, many of them with AI, because I'll tell you this, mark my words, you're going to see basically a project and a proposal for that. On-site power generation at 800 to 1,000 megawatts size at a time you might be faced with. You're seeing a lot of things right now with pipeline infrastructure resurging. You're seeing a number of things on transmission lines. To make a long story short, there was a lot of energy development coming your way, and a lot of it has to do with AI. A lot of it has to do with what I call mega sites. We're talking here about tonight where your township trustees and you can get involved in this particular process. That's what I'm going to talk about here. As a matter of fact, that's my job with Farm Bureau. I help local government, county commissioners, township trustees, local citizens groups, Farm Bureau members get involved in a number of processes because they are all finding out they do have a say in a number of particular things. It's interesting. You've probably met or heard or have seen some representatives of some companies, some organizations talking about a megasite. And oh, by the way, you have no control over this. Oh, by the way, you have no control over this. Stand to the side. When people call and tell me that, you know what I say? Oh, they didn't tell you everything of what's going on. I'm not saying at all people are lying to you. They're not. However, you need to ask a lot of clarifying questions to find out exactly where they're at on a number of particular things. Okay? And that not only goes for AI, that goes for oil and gas, it goes for pipelines, it goes for transmission line capacity, that goes for just about everything on that page. And I'm dealing with a number of particular folks. It's my job and responsibility at Farm Bureau to show you how you are involved in that process. How as a party of record, how basically with a motion to intervene at certain key state and federal agencies, you have a voice, you have representation, you have folks that have basically the ability to work for you in a number of things and negotiate a number of things with regard to that. That might sound strange, but I'm going to tell you this. These are not new rules, regulations, and laws I'm talking about, and we'll talk about for the next 25 to 30 minutes. Many of you have had those abilities since 1963. You don't see a lot of energy development up through here. Energy development is basically once or twice in a generation. And you're seeing that right now. Collective consciousness is huge. I grew up in eastern Ohio. I grew up in the Appalachian Plateau. I have relatives who were coal miners, and I tell you, my career option, if I stayed home, was to farm with one set of uncles or go into oil and gas drilling with another set. I understand that in different things. And it's interesting because of their collective consciousness is very different. When they take a look at a number of the projects on that page coming to their community, like you're seeing here, they're all going, okay, where are they meeting? Where is the table? Who's there to advocate our position, to create the stipulations and the agreements and the quality of life provisions for our community? We know how to get involved. Where's it starting? You haven't had those opportunities. You don't have any coal mines up here. You haven't had basically an oil well struck through here since about 1907, 1908. Every once in a while, you have a transmission line or a pipeline go through here, naturally so. But they understand, appreciate that. That's what we are bringing here. That's what we're allowing you to do. Sharing that collective consciousness and different things and how you can get involved in this particular process. And mark my words, I'll tell you this. What you learn working with one energy service provider is going to serve your community extremely well, because mark my words, you're going to be working with someone on another project just like it within as little as 10 years. And we're seeing that also. Power generation and economic development and different things is much different in the 21st century than it was in the 20th century. Okay? Let's keep going here. I want you to see this. Someone asked me, what's local electricity? Well, this map right here is local electricity. That's a map of the PJM interconnection network. That is a collection of large megawatt scale power generation facilities, both publicly owned and privately owned, and transmission lines which interconnect them and take generation from a number of different facilities and transports that to a number of areas. You have transmission lines all through here. And believe it or not, your local electricity comes from a number of sources in that 14-state network. That's local electricity. It does not come from a local power generation facility. It's not made in the Appalachian Plateau and brought here. It can be made and transported via that system from anywhere in the Carolinas all the way to Illinois and Chicago. That's the system, and that's how it works. When you take a look at that light bulb going through there, it got to be the point because I traded energies for Farm Bureau members very early in my career. I could probably tell you the time of day where the origin was with the electricity going through there. Why am I telling you this? Because this is in the back of the mind of a lot of people that you're going to be talking about on AI and other projects. This is natural gas. Natural gas, a local source, is any place in the eastern United States. I'll tell you this, you're close to Defiance, Ohio. There's an interconnection node there that connects the eastern pipeline system that feeds everything in the eastern United States with the western system. There's one at Defiance, and there's another one at down just north of Kings Island in that county there. I can't remember the name of the town. Oh my gosh. But natural gas is transported and traded the same way. Okay? Also, too, if you take a look there, these particular charts, and I tell you, that other place in the southern part of Ohio is Lebanon, Ohio. Lebanon, Ohio, there's an interconnection there. I stand corrected. I remembered it. Oh my God. Electric generation, natural gas, and crude oil. Those are technical analysis charts because I'm going to tell you this. Those three materials are commodities. And when I explain this to farmers, they really get it. In farming and agriculture, we are in a commodity-intensive business. Corn, wheat, beans, fluid milk, cattle, calls, puts, collars, futures contracts, trade arbitration, delivery points, everything indexed to a local grain elevator where you deliver grain basically here in the fall all the way to Chicago Mercantile Exchange and Board Exchange in Chicago. That system's been going on for over a century. That's how agricultural commodities and also our fertilizer and fuel the same way, are traded. Electricity, natural gas, and crude oil are commodities, just the same as corn, wheat, and beans. Calls, puts, collars, futures contracts, trade arbitration, delivery points, everything indexed to a local delivery point all the way to the New York Mercantile Exchange, where they've been traded for over a century. Same way. This is in the back of their mind too. I also need to tell you this. It's going to be interesting. You're talking with a lot of folks, and right now they're talking to you about an AI center. They're talking to you about brick and mortar. They're talking to you about building a very large building on a piece of ground someplace here in this county. That's one point with regard to it. What they're not telling you is there's going to be a lot of things connected to it to keep it going, and you're agreeing with me because you know that, you see that. Good. I'm glad. Because you're seeing that also. That's also going to be part of that discussion. You are going to need to bring those particular discussions up, because I'm also going to tell you this. When you start taking a look at utility upgrades to transmission lines, local distribution systems, roads and bridges, fuel capability, all of that, it's merchant function power generation. It's not done for national security. It's merchant function power generation. It's done, they're producing a commodity, and someone is buying it in a long-term power purchase agreement. And because it's merchant function, eminent domain provisions do not apply. Never have, never will. You're going to be working with a number of particular folks who are trying to put a piece of brick and mortar down in a certain location, telling you, you have no control over this, get out of the way. Well, maybe with that you might not have, because you have a number of building permits. Building a house, building a store, building a warehouse, building a strip mall, building a small industrial facility, building a large industrial facility. The only difference between those brick and mortar objects is the size. And you probably have a lot of rule, regulation, process, and law that dictates how that is done. And that's why they're telling you, you really don't have too much to say about it. What they're not talking to you about is this. That brick and mortar has to be connected to a lot of things to make it work, to make it fly, to make it successful. Electricity, natural gas, water, sewer, adequate roads, all of that. Welcome to power generation and power siting in the 21st century. Do you have a say with regard to that? The answer is yes. Why? That brick and mortar installation might be sitting here, but everything connected to it is going through your township, going through your community, is impacting you in some way, shape, or form. I had a person say, "You're full of crap, Mr. Arnold." I said, "Well, I want you to think about this. In a similar project in Central Ohio, they're building a brick and mortar object right there. They're going, I have really nothing much to say about that. But they're also building their own on-site power generation station right next to it. And House Bill 15 allows them to do that. And you're going to see 60 miles of pipelines interconnected into it to feed it. They're going to go across about 12 different townships in that county. Do you think those folks have a stake in that particular situation? He found out basically the hard way that they did. That's what I'm here to tell you about. That's what we are looking at. That's why your friends here have asked me basically to come here after they've seen this in Bowling Green. That's what we're going to talk about. There are some things, yes, you're not going to have a lot of input or control over. But there's a number of things that you are, because it impacts your local community, it impacts the quality of your life, and that infrastructure is going across their jurisdictional territory, which is your neighborhood. And you had a say in a lot of that since 1963. You might want to think about that when you're focusing on how can I get involved in this process? How can I make sure that the quality of life that we all have here is going to be maintained, preserved, or improved? How can I negotiate a number of key provisions to make sure things are done the way it needs to be done for my community? Because I'm going to tell you this, when you talk about power siting casework, they are all individual permits. And depending on how well a community gets involved at that table to negotiate their position, goes into the quality of a number of different permits basically associated with that. If we're talking about electric generation, there are 7 key principles that have to be met before the Ohio Power Siting Board issues a permit. 2 of the 7 have to do with the technical ability of it. You know, stringing a pigtail and getting the electricity in there. The other 5 have to do with quality of life. And that's where you get involved. For some of you, that might be a new concept. But that's been basically a strategy a number of people have taken a look at since the 1960s when they've been given that particular ability. Let's keep going here. I want you to think about this. Yeah. Besides oil and gas, you're going to see a lot of discussion on telecom and telecommunications. Our folks in Henry County are taking a look at a lot of fiber optic lines, and the question is, what rights, what abilities do you have to do this going across the ditches in front of my farm and my road, and why are you sitting in my field? Understanding, appreciating, and asking key questions regarding that basically is huge. Understanding that process is huge. You're going to see that. Yeah. Telecom operations, I'll tell you this. AI and mega center work is not new to Ohio. Right now, we have 1,800 data centers in operation in different parts of the state. I have one in my building right next to my office. It's basically on another side of a wall, and it's a 40 by 40 room of a tremendous amount of computers, a tremendous amount of telecommunications equipment that we use computer-wise, network-wise to do a number of things. Many of you are involved with that right now. How many farmers basically, how many of you guys have yield monitors on your John Deere combine? Every time basically you pick up your cell phone and you ask it a question, and that thing basically revolves and the answer comes up, you use as much power in those couple of minutes as you would basically in a home. Because interconnections in this network between different data centers is how it works, and we're all using that. Consequently, to make that work more efficiently, they are all being consolidated into what are called mega centers. Asking critical questions about who is going to benefit from this particular facility and how am I going to benefit from it is absolutely positively huge. Asking and understanding that and finding out basically who is going to own, operate, the customers, how is it going to serve our community in some way, shape, or form is absolutely huge. Asking those pressing questions is huge. Okay? Let's keep going here. I want you to think about this. Issues to consider. Local public notice, transparency, and input. It's interesting. How many of you found out about the AI center that's being done here? How many did you find out about it very early and very often? How many of you found out that you felt basically it was too late to do anything about it? And you're nodding your head. Yes, but I'm going to tell you this. Technology moves at the speed of light. The rules, the regulations that dictate how you are to be informed about it moves at the speed of, well, it's a lot slower, let's put it that way. In many cases, the only legal obligation you have to do in your local newspaper of record is put a legal notice in the legal notice section. Who's your legal newspaper here? How many are you served by on a daily basis or a weekly basis? Do you have one? Things to talk about. How are you notified? How do you use social networking? How do you use news, basically? How do you use Facebook? How do you use a number of things on your computer and on your phone? How are those applied? How do you want to be notified of a number of particular things? How do you want to find out to be able to be involved in this process before you feel as though it's kind of too late? Sometimes that's used basically as, some people use it as an advantage, and some people, rightly so, see it as a disadvantage because you find out rather too late in the process the decision that's going to be made in some way, shape, or form. Trying to get information early and often and expressing that concern when you have the time to talk about a number of officials who are doing these things is absolutely huge. Banning something. I'm going to tell you this right now. Banning something is not a legal option. You're probably thinking, you know, the only thing we really need to do is need to come in here and tell these guys right here, do a resolution and ban any type of that development in our township, and we'll be done with this. And that can be done, but I'm also going to tell you this. Anything can be legally challenged. And you're seeing a lot of that in a lot of different places. Anything can be appealed, anything can be argued. And if you make a decision like that, you are going to have to prove your reasoning that was used to create that decision. And that reason is we just don't want to have it here is not going to work. Talking about those particular things. Taking a look at community planning process early and often. Working with a number of folks about that. If you are being, and if these gentlemen are being pressed, and you probably have and you probably will be, being pressed to make a decision or to pass a resolution saying yes to something or whatever, there are certain things you can do with Robert's Rules of Order, basically to delay that until a number of things basically are very clear and can be evaluated. Tabling a motion is something which still can be done. How many of you guys were in FFA? How many of you guys were in parliamentary procedure? Now you know why we had parliamentary procedure. And a number of townships basically who are being pressed to make a decision. And I said, you know, you don't have to do that. You can ask some pressing questions, asking for detailed information why this needs to be approved this evening, asking for detailed information from that developer, asking if rule, regulation, and laws in place in the Ohio Administrative Code for some of this, yes or no. And you can table any consideration until you get information and materials basically which answers those. You make a motion basically to ban something or moratorium. That's legally debatable, appealable, and you can take it to court. And you're going to have to prove your position. You table a motion until you are given accurate information that you can make a determination, yes or no, with regard to this. And our community can understand and appreciate the issues here. We are tabling a motion on that consideration until further notice. When you table a motion, it's not arguable, it's not debatable, it's not appealable. It's basically You're going to wait until you get accurate information that you all can appreciate and understand. And supporting them to do that is absolutely positively huge. Okay? I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Communities should engage in zoning conversations regularly. I'm talking with a lot of folks, they haven't done anything on their zoning since 1973. You might want to work very closely with these guys to take a look at. We're going to be seeing this again in the next 3 to 5 years. What are some provisions, what are some procedures we need to have in our zoning ordinances basically to help us address those particular issues? Can you be involved in that in some way, shape, or form? Who has the authority over water and other resources that these data centers need? We'll talk about that in a minute. You need to ask those questions basically too. Data centers use a lot of electricity and utility resources. How is that paid for and regulated? We're going to talk about that basically in a minute. And what negotiated quality of life stipulations are preserved regardless of a tax abatement? How are we benefiting from this? For more information on that, Roy, you brought a bunch of handouts, correct? And you'll be able to get some more from him. He goes into details about that answer those particular things. Plus, give me a call. This is Christopher the Mill for another conversation, but I wanted to bring this up to you here so you can see it. Let's keep going here. Power generation. House Bill 15 allows the developer of an AI project to create their own generation facility. That became law late last year. You already have 8 permits with the Ohio Power Siting Board that where these types of developers are developing very large natural gas turbine generation stations in different parts of the state, and they're being located right next to their brick and mortar facility. Okay? Doing that saves a lot of money, time, and effort. It saves 48 months in the permit process and different things, being able to do it that way. It also skips having to directly interconnect into the transmission grid or the local distribution infrastructure because the electricity is pigtailed directly into the facility. However, what they're not telling you is this. Those particular facilities, I'm seeing some right now between 800 and 1,000 megawatts in size. That's rather large. They're going to sit on somewhere around 100 acres. They're going to be almost as big as the brick and mortar unit that they're basically there to power. You see a picture of one of them there, which is a natural gas fired turbine generation station. Let me tell you this, that station might just serve them, but because of the infrastructure and the impact on the community, that's me up here doing that, gosh. It is governed by the Ohio Power Siting Board. They still have to have a permit from the Ohio Power Siting Board. The Ohio Power Siting Board is that part of the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio when you're talking about a generation facility, regardless of the technology. Coal, nuclear, wind, solar, biomass, fuel cell. If it's 50 megawatts or above in capacity or larger, it needs to have a permit from the Ohio Power Siting Board. These companies are going to be basically putting a generation facility right next to their brick and mortar unit. It's going to be that size. They're going to need a permit. That permit is a judicial process. I want you to think of it as a court of law. It is evidence-based. Anything you can do basically in a local court of common pleas, you do through this process. Your township trustees have right of intervention automatically to represent you, to become parties of record in those cases, and negotiate a number of key quality of life provisions that you see and uniquely identify in German Township. That's why it's created that way. They have the right of a formal intervention. They have the right to basically represent you at the table in those proceedings with that power plant. They might not have much they can say about the brick and mortar, but they do have a lot they can say about that. Understanding those proceedings, understanding too that you're going to see local public hearings with regard to that, understanding that you can make comments in that casework is huge. That could be grist for the mill for another meeting, but that's an avenue that you would probably want to pursue to take a look at. We're talking here about the citizens of German Township. We're talking about someone bringing in, besides a brick and mortar unit, a power plant. That power plant is going to be served by a tremendous amount of infrastructure. How is that going to impact our community? How do we want it to impact our community? Do we have the right to be involved in that? Your local government officials, including your county commissioners, your township trustees, have the ability to do it. Why do I know about that? I was involved in 110 power siting cases for Farm Bureau members because local citizens groups can organize and be part of that process too. You might want to think about that. You might want to take a look at that. You might want to take a look at those options. Okay? Let's keep going here. SB 15, large on-site technology. As I said, that first slide, any power generation asset has to follow that process. Even this on-site stuff built right next to it. If it's 50 megawatts or more, boom, we got to do it. However, I do need to tell you this. What happens if it's smaller? That's called a large on-site model, and that's between 5 and 49.9 megawatts. That doesn't come under Ohio Power Siting Board authority. Guess whose authority it comes under? Hi, guys. House Bill 510 in 2023 basically said this: if you want to put a power generation asset of any technology in between 4.9 and 49.9 megawatts, we confer power siting authority to the Township Trustees and their Zoning Appeals Board. Which means this. Let me ask you this, gentlemen. I know I don't want to press you, but do you have any power siting things in your zoning ordinances or whatever with regard to that? Do you think these guys need some help? Which means this. There basically is an avenue you can take a look at with regard to that. How can I help you? I can at least get you information material where you can find examples of things in the Ohio Administrative Code that you can work with regard to that. I'm not telling you to write down everything verbatim that you find in Ohio law, but there might be some provisions in there that are unique that address the needs of German Township. I'm sure you're going to be wanting to work with your Zoning Appeals Board and probably some members in a citizens group to help you with that process. That's one thing we can do with regard to Farm Bureau. I can get you that information, and that's why it's said it that particular way. That's something you want to take a look at. Okay? As a matter of fact, yeah. I want you to take a look at this. I've already caused a hell of a lot of grief in 2 towns. You're one of those, aren't you? And you are? Oh my gosh, I love you. This is the first time we've been in the same room together, isn't it? Yes. 2 different occasions in this county in the last 2 months, you had an energy service provider come in saying, we're going to do a community scale power generation project. It's not big enough to go to the Power Siting Board, but we're going to do it here. It's going to be somewhere around 40 megawatts in size. It's going to be here in Wasion. It's going to be here in Archibald. It's going to sit on, well, we're not going to tell you how many acres yet. But we want you to approve it now. And what did I say to you when you gave me their first phone call?
Oh, gosh.
Well, I'll paraphrase. I don't want to put you down. But I'm going to tell you this. 2 developers have already come into this county and said, you have power siting authority. We want to put a 40 megawatt system in your township or within your city limits, you have power siting authority and you need to approve this. Well, under the law, they have power siting authority, but this type of power generation, legally in Ohio, it doesn't exist. And that's why I had a 3-hour phone conversation with your folks.
Laws, rules, or regulations for it.
That's right. Some people are going to be very honest with you and tell you a number of things. Others probably are just going to let you go by the wayside because ignorance is bliss, but incredibly expensive. And it wasn't until your group and another group basically started asking some very specific questions in a local public hearing that the cat was out of the bag. And what did your local government body do? They tabled it until they got further information, further materials, further rules or regulations of guidance that they could use from the state of Ohio, because this is not law yet. Don't feel too bad. This has happened. Well, let's take a look at it this way. I've already talked to 60 different townships in 60 different counties where developers have gone in and have tried to do that. Asking pressing questions, understanding what is rule, regulation, and law, what is not, what authority you have under certain things, your ability to table certain things until you get accurate information is absolutely positively huge. And it's happened twice here in this county within the last 90 days. Okay? Don't feel bad about that. It's happened 6 other places in 6 other counties in the southern part of the state. So that's what's going on too. Okay? How many of you guys have rooftop solar? You don't have to worry about this, because I tell you this, when you talk about rooftop solar for your home, your farm, or your business, you've had the ability to do that since the mid-1990s. Your relationship is an interconnection letter and permit between you and your incumbent utility. It's actually reviewed by the Public Utilities Commission as a tariff. And if you want to do that on your home, farm, and your business, they're going to give you the guidance document, they're going to give you the information materials where you're being able to use it and do it efficiently, effectively, and legally. And your township also has the right to have additional things on there with regard to aesthetics and decommissioning. I have a lot of folks, because we have over 60,000 of those particular units. A number in this township are going, does that mean they're going to come and get my rooftop solar? The answer is no. Because the rule, regulation, process, and law that govern that at your farm is already there. Okay? I'm going to give you that too, and you're nodding your head like this and smiling. You feel a lot better now. It's hard to starting to pump again. Okay, good. Okay? Let's keep going here. I'm almost done. As I said, they're not only going to talk to you about a brick and mortar building, they're going to eventually talk to you about, oh my gosh, we're going to do some power generation work. Or we need to do the local distribution system for interconnection. Or we need to have a transmission line run to our facility across this property. We need a gas line in some way, shape, or form. All of those are permits with the Ohio Power Siting Board, and in some cases, depending on whether interconnected, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. When they start talking to you about that, start asking them, and what permits are you going to have with the Power Siting Board? What permits are you going to have with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission? Well, there's your FERC docket and queue number. When are the local public hearings for those particular procedures being scheduled? Because it's all standard and boilerplate. When and under what rights do township trustees and local citizens have the right of intervention to become a party of record? When are you going to start talking to people about quality of life provisions in your permits? That's all part of this particular process too, okay? How are we going to do? Water. I want you to think about this. I'm already involved in 6 water cases across Ohio. While electricity and natural gas are governed by the PUCO and the Ohio Power Siting Board, and you have a very precise and extensive adjudicatorial process where you can exercise your rights and responsibilities to be involved in those and negotiate a number of things. Water is just a little different. Water comes under the jurisdiction of the state EPA. I'm dealing in 6 different communities right now where they're talking about doing or expanding a rural water utility. Because they're saying, well, this big industrial complex is coming and they're saying they're going to need some water. Do you still need to ask questions about that? The answer is yes. The question is, how much water? Also, a lot of people think water rights are just the same as mineral rights. If we're talking about oil and gas, whatever is under your property, you own and have to the center of the earth. That's your mineral rights. That's your mineral estate. You have control over that. Water, it's different. It's called the waters of the states. It goes underneath there in a much different way than oil and gas. Your use of water is governed basically under the Ohio Administrative Road in that particular area, and also by riparian doctrine. If you can get to the water, be it surface water or be it groundwater, you can use it in the quantity basically you want to, as long as you don't impact the need of that resource to your neighbors. And that's going to be a very nebulous definition and has to be approved in court under Ohio drainage law, which is highly fascinating. And reasonable use doctrine. Let me also tell you this. When you're talking about water use for one of those facilities, they're going to use water for cooling all that equipment. That's incredibly expensive. You're probably going to find this out. Those buildings are built in such a way as they actually trap and use the incumbent wind currents in that particular area for cooling. 98% of their cooling is by air cooling. And shifting that air through ventilators and different things from where they capture it along the sides of their building and the roof through the building. It's air cooling. 2% is used with water if weather conditions warrant. As a matter of fact, the amount of water they're going to use is somewhere around the same as an average 18-hole golf course in the community uses on a daily basis to irrigate. That's still a lot of water. That's still water use. But you need to ask pressing questions and get exact amounts about how much are we talking about here. And if you want to do a water utility infrastructure, it has to benefit not only you, but everyone else in this community. And why does it need to be done? And how is it going to be done? And who is going to pay for it? Sometimes there's a misnomer there because people think they're going to be using millions of gallons of water. But they're going to be using a lot. But it's going to be under those particular provisions. And if they're going to build anything, it has to benefit you as a community stakeholder as well as them. Those types of discussions have to go forward and have to be clearly dealt with. Getting accurate information with regard to that is incredibly huge. Okay? I'm almost done, guys. This is good. You might want to get involved with this. This is a picture of Evan Calico. He is my counterpart on my team at Ohio Farm Bureau. While I work in all four corners of the state with you guys, he works at Capitol Square. He basically is our energy-related lobbyist and does all of the testimony and things there. He's a real nice guy. House Bill 646 was just projected. It's being considered by the Ohio General Assembly. It's putting together a study group on what kind of rule, regulation, process, and law do we need at a county, a township, and a state level to address the issues we're talking about here. would it be kind of nice for your county farm bureau president, please stand, sir, if he was given the opportunity basically to negotiate, or not negotiate, but to testify at a local public hearing with regard to this? What message do you want to bring? What information materials does that person need to share? Or when you have a legislative district committee meeting with your local state representatives, usually you have it here at Sodders, you can bring them in and talk to them. What messages, what information do you need to express to them about that bill? Listen to these folks and giving them some sort of idea with regard to that is probably something you want to take a look at in policy development. Okay? That's what's going on too. Well, congratulations. Welcome aboard. I'm glad you're here because you're now all involved in energy development and power siting. You probably were thinking at the beginning of this guy was talking about basically a brick and mortar building. Why is he talking about all this stuff with regard to energy and utility? Because that brick and mortar building is probably, the permits are there to build it. And have been for quite some time. But the permits, the community discussion, the impact, and all of that for everything going into it still has to be expressed and dealt with, and you have time and ability to negotiate along those particular areas. Think about it, if they can't get the electricity, if they can't get the natural gas, if they can't get the pipelines or whatever, are they going to build the building? That's what you want to think about. It might sound kind of new, it might sound kind of crazy, but those are things you want to consider, and those are things I've been helping a lot of Farm Bureau members for quite some time do in other parts of the state as well as here on things. Why is it important? That building is going to go basically into a place. They're going to have their own power generation facility. They're going to have pipelines going to it to feed it. They're going to have electric transmission and distribution lines feeding it. They're probably going to work with the county engineer about upgrading some county and township roads to get traffic in and out of there. It's going to be sitting in your township. It's going to be sitting on your acreage. It's going to be impacting your ground. It's going to be impacting your water table. It's going to be impacting your drainage areas. And you have a right to be involved in the process of evaluating facilities that are going to do that. That's what we've been talking about here. Things to think about. If I've given you something else different to chew on, that's great. But I'm going to tell you this, let's continue the conversation. Again, I've given you a lot. Think about this. If you need additional information, you give Roy a call, you give me a call, or give me an email, and let's continue the conversation. I really appreciate the Township Trustees from German Township. For a couple of these guys, they saw me do this presentation in Bowling Green with some Farm Bureau members down there. Also, if we need to do this presentation again, there's nothing in the rule book that says I can only come to German Township once. I can come again. Okay? Are there any questions? This is all as clear as smoke. Yes, sir.
You mentioned power siting board. We had a township in another part of Fulton County they're stuck with over 2,000 acres of solar field.
Yeah.
Our county commissioners had their one vote on going down to the hearing, and we got
Well,
every time.
I'm going to tell you this. I saw that and I talked with them because you're going to find this out. There's a process there. It's a judicial process, which also means this. You have the responsibility to make sure everything that you need to have filed and listed in those proceedings done correctly. I'm not saying this is going to be easy, or I'm not saying if you show up, you're going to be able to automatically participate. Yes, I know those people extremely well. I know those farmers extremely well. I explained to them in detail why decisions were made in such a way, and they're going, we need to think about this more carefully the next time we do it. And the answer to that one is yes. I'm not saying this is going to be easy, which also means this, and I'm so glad you asked the question, because are you going to need legal counsel to guide you? The answer is yes. Do I have legal counsel? I don't have one. I don't endorse one law firm. I have a list with 12 of them on there. And your township trustees knows a couple of them and are going to be working with them on your behalf. But sir, you bring a very valid point, and I'm glad you did, because a lot of people are going to find this out. This is not going to be fun and games. This is going to be precise. Remember, you are working in a court of law. Power Signing Board is the judge, the jury, and executioner on these proceedings. The EPA is the judge, the jury, and executioner on water proceedings. Having things filed, having things prepared, checking and double checking that you do that is going to be crucial. That's also part of this process too. I hope I've answered your question, but I know those guys extremely well. Okay? Let's do this. Go ahead. I'll be right back to you for the quick round. Yeah.
So you said that eminent domain does not apply. So it's my understanding that the federal government is considering making AI data centers a utility. Have you heard that? And if they do, then eminent domain would apply?
The answer is no, I have not heard that. Would a facility like that be defined as a utility? I think that basically is a far fetch.
I'm just going to repeat the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I heard that they are considering making AI data centers a utility, and the federal government is considering this. If they make them a utility, will eminent domain apply? Was my question.
Okay. Yeah, hang on. We'll give it over here to this gentleman. He'll pass it down. One thing basically is this. You're going to be hearing a number of things that people are going to come up with all sorts of ideas about things. The question is it accurate or not? Federal government, with the federal boards, and with with FERC, NERC, PJM, and different things, reaching a definition of utility for those is rather a far stretch. As a matter of fact, it's interesting, at the federal level, they basically will focus on transmission systems to get things from point A to point B. Utility infrastructure and utility operations will be done at a state level, under state rule, state law. And I haven't heard anybody saying anything yet at the Ohio General Assembly about doing that. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but stay vigilant with regard to it, okay? Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
The renewable data centers in Fort Wayne are currently having discussions about small modular reactors
Yes.
as an alternative source instead of electric.
Yes.
What kind of information do you have on nuclear power being used?
Good question, because I'm going to tell you this. Any type of power generation can be permitted. In Ohio, that is also kosher. Any type of power generation can be permitted. Is that being discussed by a number of our leaders in utilities, energy service providers, rules and regulators? The answer is yes. Have you seen anything basically come to fruition with regard to that in a piece of legislation? Not yet, but stay tuned. Okay? It can happen. It can be done. Small nuclear reactors are not new. I'll tell you this. You have 3 of them in Minnesota, 2 in the northern panhandle of Idaho, 3 in Wisconsin that are giving power generation in rural areas. Because they're portable, they're easily maintained, they can be watched. It's a different type of technology. Is that something you're taking a look at here in Ohio? The answer is yes. Will we be seeing some sort of legislation or discussion with regard to that? I wouldn't be surprised if we do. Stay tuned for further developments, and that's a very nice question. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
This, I hate to bring this up, but because you're here, this isn't really about the data centers, I'm just wondering, this isn't specifically about the data centers,
Okay.
but since you're here. So I just wonder, who regulates all this, I mean, after it's built?
After it's built?
Like for the solar fields, for example. Like I went up to Fayette and there's a whole bunch of dead trees, and in their application, because you can see all this on the Ohio Power Siting Board, what the application is, everything that they proposed, and one thing was to have a buffer of trees, and of course the pictures of what they were supposed to look like and what they actually look like are not
Right.
the same.
Yes.
They have sketches, that's not the same, but anyways, there's a lot of dead trees, so I wrote to the Ohio Power Siting Board about it, and they got back to me, and there's over 300 dead trees. So they said, we will try to find out a timeline for you if you'd like. I would like to know a timeline of when these are going to be replanted. So they got back to me and said, fall of 2026, because they'll have the most success rate of, living.
Okay.
Totally agree, fall's the time to plant. But these were dead last summer.
Yeah.
Why didn't they plant them fall of 2025? And when I contacted him, he's like, I'll have to look into this. And I'm gonna tell you, he was really great. He got back to me the same day. He was great. But it's like, who follows up on that? Why didn't they plant them fall of 2025?
Matt's a real nice guy. I like it.
So Matt,
Yeah.
he seems really nice. But my question is, who watches out for this? Who's going out there to make sure that
Good.
things aren't happening?
The answer to that is, you're doing what needs to be done. But I also need to tell you this. Following the rule, the regulation, and the law is huge. Remember, this is a court and this is a process. There's a complaint resolution program with regard to that. Also, too, and I can send you information on that, that report comes out quarterly with public comments and concerns. And what's interesting is I've had a lot of people in other parts of the state will just nonchalantly call the Power Siting Board and talk to someone here. But that never makes that report. I've shown a lot of people, especially with a project of an hour's drive south of here, don't send it to this field person from the solar company who says, I'll take care of it right away, because it's probably going into file 13. This is how you do it at the Power Siting Board, and you want to record it there. And when it hits the public docket, someone is going to say, an attorney examiner with the power of judge is going to say, what the sandhill is going on up there? And the next thing you know, the inspectors and the enforcement agency is going to be there, and an order is going to be written. Doing that is huge. Following the process that is used, and it's interesting, there's a lot of people who don't understand or appreciate or know of that particular process. It hasn't been advertised very well. I get a lot of calls from a lot of folks who've done the same thing that you have. Well, I called somebody down there, they said they'll take a look at it or different things. Nothing's really been done. Did you file this basically under the docket?
I did.
Yeah. Which means once that is done, you see things basically starting to go and starting to do. Continue to do that. And again, very similar to this gentleman's question, you got to be very precise in the arguments and the proceedings. You also have to be very precise in the enforcement actions and filing them.
Right, I mean, I went through the application and stated where it's
Yes.
spelled all this out, and that's not what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I would still do that. I would still show that this made this report on these days as a matter of public record. Why aren't you doing something about it? Okay? Continue to do that through that process.
I feel like there should be somebody overseeing it. I don't feel like the public should have to do that.
Well,
If they filed an application with the
I
Ohio Power
understand.
Siting Board, I feel like somebody from the Ohio Power Siting Board should be coming out to all these locations and surveying everything that's going
Yeah.
on and looking at that application
Well-
and being like, nope, that's not done, nope, that's not done, they failed, they failed, they failed, they
Yes.
failed. And
I wish they would. I've talked to them about that. I've testified basically in case proceedings with regard to that. I hope we make leeway and progression with regard to that. I understand where you're coming from.
I just feel like they put this on us, and then they just leave us here to deal with it after the fact.
Yeah. Like to say, some things work extremely well, and some things it's like, and I said this to them, you know, you guys are nice guys, but if you going up there and explain to people how to use the complaint resolution process, and they're going, do we need to? And I'm going, yes, you do. That's part of it too. I appreciate basically
It's
the
very
comment.
nice, I have to say. You got back to the door.
Yeah, because he probably put it on somebody's radar screen, which is okay. Any other questions? Sir, you had a question. This gentleman here wants the microphone, then we'll get to you. Well, whoever you want to get to. He's been waiting patiently for a second question. All right.
Thank you for coming to Fulton County for this. This is the 4th meeting that we've had, and our main concern right now has been data center. That thing, to me, looks like a plague. I'm really glad you were here because we've all heard rumors, well, they can generate their own electricity. You answered that question. This is just another arm of the giant that we have to pay attention to.
And you have the ability to do a number of things there. That's why I'm here. People find that, you mean to tell me I might not be able to do anything on the brick and mortar because that permit is etched in here and that's how it works? And the answer is yes, but you have permits on power siting that you have a say in, You have the ability to negotiate a number of key quality of life provisions. You need to pursue it there.
Now,
That's
you
why
did
I'm here.
touch on one thing that has been in the back of my mind all along here. We are going to need legal counsel.
Yeah.
And I think the attendance for every meeting has been fantastic. And I hope the feeling against this is enough that we have to dig down in our pockets a little bit and hire a lawyer to fight our cause. Maybe better be prepared for it.
Well, that's just it too, yeah. Nothing is done for free. I do have to say this. I've already worked with your township trustees and gave them a referral to a person, basically, they could work with regard to that. Also, to remember this, your township leaders have to follow a certain protocol here because their legal counsel is the county prosecutor, correct? Which means this, when they want additional legal counsel or they need a legal interpretation on things or they need a service on things, they have to go through that person. I understand and appreciate that. I also say this, I'll be more than happy to talk to that particular person or that company. Because when you think about, and God bless your county prosecutors, why do you elect them? What's the focus that they work a lot of things on? Crime and crime prevention. And in many cases, rightfully so. Do you think they have the individual knowledge, skill, and expertise to have to do with power siting? No. Which means this, you need to work with them first. And I've had some wonderful conversations with county prosecutors. And they said, Mr. Arnold, I've been recommended by you by a number of our community leaders. I need to talk to a member of my legal community who can help me help them with these issues. Can you recommend anybody? I have 12 people I can recommend. That's the process you go through. That's the process they have to go through. Their legal counsel is their county prosecutor. In many cases, your county prosecutor is going to say, I need someone to help me. We've got some folks to help you with regard to that. Okay? And more of those discussions are going on. I deal with this on almost a daily basis with regard to that. Because we're talking here about, and again, with this gentleman's question and your question, a number of them, you're finding out that some of this stuff is not going to be easy. It's rather complex. I don't expect you to be Clarence Darrow in 20 minutes. I'm not. which means this: being able to get access to legal counsel to help you and ask those questions and different things is incredibly huge. That's part of this process too. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, man. Okay, go ahead.
No problem. Is there anything being done either here or in other areas of the state to involve FFA, 4-H, or high school civics classes?
Oh, God, I wish. How can I say this? Yes, and I do a lot of lecturing at the college level on things like that. It's interesting because people ask me, well, Mr. Arnold, you're not a lawyer. How do you know all this stuff? Well, number one, yes, I've spent most of my career in this particular area. I have 2 notebooks and I write a lot of notes. That's how I've learned. But also, I learned a lot of things in my basic civics class. When you were a senior in high school and I graduated in the late 70s, you had to take government class your senior year. You had to pass it. If you didn't graduate. You learned about rule, regulation, process, law, how this system works. Some folks did well in that class, and there's others who I think went smoking in the boys' room during that time. Is there a huge influx of where we need to teach people how to use this process again? The answer is, oh yes, we do. That's also part of my work in different things. I'm sure for a number of you, it's interesting to watch your faces and different things. You probably learn 2 or 3 things here that, you know, this strategy might be different because we need to also take a look at these avenues besides just the brick and mortar unit. We need to take a look at power siting, we need to take a look at utility law, we need to take a look at proceedings and different things. I can help with regard to that. Okay? Yes, sir.
You said that roughly 2% of the water, or of the cooling is done by water, right?
It will be used when adverse weather conditions warrant that, and they want to have that built into the system. If there are certain weather conditions or whatever where they have to use water for cooling, they want to have the ability to do that. They need to explain that to you. They need to explain what infrastructure they have and what water resources need to be there on standby to address those issues.
Sorry, I'm trying to come up with a question at the same time. If only 2% of the water of the cooling is done by water, all the information that I could read was that in New Albany, I think I'm saying that correctly, there's a Google data center that is using 127 million gallons of water a year. If they're only using 2% of their cooling with our water, the rest of that has to fall back on electricity, even if it's air cooling. You know, those systems are not easy to run. So my electric bill this month went up like $150 or something like that, and there's no data center around here.
Right.
But we are getting charged. I only spent like $100-something on my electricity. Everything else that was added onto it is coming from the fees of transporting the electricity.
Yeah, the capacity at the local distribution level, the
Yeah.
transmission level, yes.
So
I've been involved with that casework for 4 years.
that's getting passed up onto us too.
Well, I want you to think about this. Now you know why, and one of the arguments they're going to have with regard to HB 15 about doing their own site power generation. They need massive amounts of power instead of bringing the transmission lines and the local distribution lines to upgrade that and getting it from points further east or west. We are going to be building it here and using it here. You need to ask them carefully about that. And I'm also going to tell you this. When you're talking about water or other data, gosh, I can get data all over the place. The question for you basically is where did that data come from? Where was it authenticated? And you have a very nice question to ask basically a representative of a company who might come here to talk to you about that, saying, I read this here in New Albany. That's an incredible amount of water, and that's more water than the entire county uses in a day. Which also leads to another thing. We've got this thing called the internet. Let me tell you about the internet. Here's the secret. Everything on it is true. I'm not saying you're wrong or whatever, but I tell you this. Don't take it as gospel, but make sure you ask the question to someone who can answer it in more form, saying, I read this here. How accurate is this statement? Because that's huge too, because let me tell you something about it's called social inflation, and it's interesting on the internet, it's really taken over. As a matter of fact, I sit on OP3, the Ohio Public-Private Partnership, along with the Emergency Management Agency, and I've done that for 10 to 12 years. Social inflation is becoming a national security issue. Why? Because anybody basically with an internet website can basically write anything they want, and people basically read it and treat it as gospel. Case in point, I had a lady with a doctorate in the medical profession send me something like that. And I trailed it down to the source, and it came basically from a person who is not knowledgeable on water use, but is incredibly knowledgeable on Harley-Davidson motorcycles and AR-17s. And that's all he had on his website. And I sent that to her, and I said, when you had to defend your dissertation at Ohio State and you got your doctorate, everything had to be authenticated, right? Yeah. Did you use the same scrutiny on this stuff you got off the internet as you would basically in a doctorate and dissertation? The answer is, you've given me something to think about. Accuracy of information is absolutely huge. I commend you basically for that and remembering that when you've got a very good question to ask basically one of these guys who might come in the room and talk about water use. Tell them you've read that and ask them what's accurate. They need to be able to give that to you. Okay?
You mentioned the Ohio EPA. I came in here last week and talked about how they were proposing a permit that would allow them to dump water, the cooling water, back into our water, basically.
Yeah.
You've been preaching that people should get involved in stuff, and I agree with you completely. I think that the problem right now is there's too many people who sit on their butts and don't do anything when stuff like this happens, because this is a state issue. It's not a local issue. We're being financially crushed citizens from the state issues. Who do I go to, and where do I go to, or where do people go to get involved in this EPA discussion?
Well, I'm going to tell you this, my friend. It's almost like this. I understand where you're coming from. I really do, because you're going to find this out. There are some things, yeah, that are under state issue. But when you're talking about a local water use permit, it's going to be a local water use permit, which means it's going to be centered in this county. You're going to be seeing local public hearings with regard to that, and local input have to be given in that individual proceeding because it has to do with a permit in this county. That's where the rubber's going to hit the road. That's what you need to be prepared to do.
It just seems from an outside perspective that the local citizens are not prepared to fight this battle. So we fought it before. The villages and the towns are a choking point. In reality, they're a choking point for the issues. The issues are coming from a bigger funnel all the way up the hill. So if we get up to the top of the hill and we're like, hey, this issue is affecting everybody at the bottom, I feel like it would be more beneficial than versus just coming in here and being like, we're only going to deal with this at the local level. I'm not saying that we should not deal with it at the local level. I'm just saying it feels like we should be getting involved further higher up. So specifically regarding the EPA, where can we go, or where can I go, I guess? Because I'm not, like you said, I didn't take a class on this. I'm 33.
Okay. What I would say is this. If and when water becomes an issue, and they have to have a water use permit, their proceeding is different than the Ohio Power Siting Board. It's made notice here. Continue to work very closely with your township trustees, because your township trustees have the right and the ability to create a resolution to say, if you are doing this proceeding about a water permit in our township, we passed a resolution and you are compelled and have to have local public hearings here to discuss that. That's the first step. Second step basically is working with a number of folks to take a look at very detailed things on water uses for the farms, working with Extension, working with the SWCD on the work that they do there with regard to that, to talk about here's the procedures that we use in German Township, and here's the potential impact if you're going to be taking this type of water out of the water table. Those things have to be done at that particular level. Okay? Yeah. You're quite welcome. Thanks for your question. I appreciate that. I hope I helped you some.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a quick question. So I was actually at a regional RGP data center presentation called a couple months ago. And then I had a couple of coworkers go to their annual meeting last week, and they told me, you guys are in trouble, Northwest Ohio. They said they are, and we found some marketing brochures, right? They're marketing Northwest Ohio as, you know, prime real estate for data centers. So I wake up about every morning about 1 a.m. trying to think through this all. And
You're like me.
Yeah.
I just take nap
so we see
for my nightmares.
Yeah, we see the same playbook, right? Developers, you know, trying to grab up land, sign NDAs. So the thought crossed my mind the other night, it's, you know, I don't think Archibald's a poor community. I think we're well off. I don't think our values align with big tech. Why, in your opinion, why aren't they going and courting communities? You know, who needs the industry? Who needs the revenue? Seems like I'm going to put up a heck of a fight, and I know a lot of people here are too. Why are they willing to go that route rather than see who needs this industry, who wants this industry? And I don't even know if you have an answer, but...
No, good question, because I'm going to tell you this. One of the reasons they're in Ohio, when you take a look at the concentration of the need for AI, it's absolutely huge, number one. Number two, it's almost this too, is land acquisition is almost a foregone conclusion, which means regardless of just how expensive the land is, they're going to be able to buy it. That sounds strange, but I was in a conference last week and that was basically announced. What they're looking for, if they have basically the resources for doing power generation, transportation, transmission, interconnection, water and sewer, those things we talked about are for infrastructure. If the community or can be done easily there, that's why they are coming basically here. And the question is, do you need to be also involved in those discussions from this point forward? The answer is, yes, you do. Okay? I hope I helped you some there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I got one quick question. I don't need a microphone.
Okay.
I'll hammer it out, okay? Where's all this money coming from? These are big bucks, from what I understand. Where's it coming from?
Well, it comes from commerce. It comes from people paying bucks for that particular service. They also need to take a look at if they're going to be able to compete and have a viable business, they're going to have to invest in this type of infrastructure. They're also probably taking a look at finance from Wall Street and others, saying if we have to get a loan and bridge with regard to that, how is it going to be structured? How is it going to be financed? And remember this, these guys, the immediate now time frame for them is a 30-year time block. That's how far they think, if not further. And so given that planning structure, and given basically their business model, and given that we all love these little machines, that's part of this process too. Okay? Yeah, because remember this, you're going to be using this, maybe not as much as a large company or whatever, but you're using this too, and you're also demanding some of this service. The question is, where do you find the balance? I hope I helped you some there. And you've got a good question. Yeah?
But these hyperscale data centers are more based on AI. It's more based on AI for the hyperscale data centers.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. Do you need hyperscale AI?
No, I don't.
Well, I hope not, because I tell you this, when I walk home, I have a nice 15-year-old grandson who gets on there basically with his he's on Xbox with 5 or 6 other kids, and he's got his headphones on, and he's talking with this and all that. That's all being done through AI. You have farmers in here who have a crop monitor and yield monitor on their John Deere combine. Guess where that data is being stored and being analyzed? Not in the cloud. It's in an AI center someplace. You talk about schools and education and different
Well, that's
things.
going
Yes.
huge now.
Yeah, well now you do that, because I'm going to tell you this. On your own phone, yeah, Google any question, and when it takes 15 or 20 seconds, you've activated about 3 or 4 different AI centers in the Eastern Seaboard to find your answer.
But I feel like people really need this.
Well,
it's the 5 big billionaire companies that are shoving it down our throats.
I understand, and that's part of the argument, but the question basically is too, is how much do you need? What are you going to sacrifice not using it? And all that. Because for a lot of folks, I want and I need this. It's amazing. I've been in some rooms or whatever with some of our friends, and they're going, I don't need this. And one farmer says, you use yield monitors on your John Deere? Guess where your data is that you've been crunching for the last 3 days? We all need it in some way, shape, or form, but where do you find a balance and where do you place it? And it's almost like this too. I think the biggest challenge we have, from what I'm hearing from folks, is they come in here, they start planning with some folks, and we find out about it, what we feel, too late. Which means being very open, very transparent, and having a very dedicated timeline from step 1 to step whatever, how this process goes, needs to be reconfigured and reseen based on what is our need for information, what is our need to be involved in this particular process and decisions, what do we feel that needs to be done here in Waseon, and what do we feel that doesn't have to be in Waseon. Okay? Case in point, I'm going to tell you this. I had one lady, I was at a meeting with the Power Siting Board, and they were talking about putting a power generation station in a rural area in southeastern Ohio about 3 years ago. And this lady basically said, we don't need this power generation station, we don't need this, we don't need that. I moved down here 15 years ago, my husband and I have a real nice house, we've got 5 acres, and all I want to see is corn and beans in those fields. The attorney examiner in charge of the case winked at me, and I'm going, oh my God, I know where he's going on this one. He said, ma'am, that's wonderful, and our court reporter has taken that down. Is there anything else that we can help you with? And she said, I need a Kroger Marketplace within 10 minutes of my house. Oh, it gets better. You know that Township road I live on? I can only do 35 to 40 miles an hour on a good day. It needs to be upgraded by the county engineer so I can do 55 to 60. I want to have 3-phase power from the co-op. I have a computer system here and different things. I want fiber optic and 5G. When's that all coming? And that gentleman said, well, ma'am, I understand where you're coming from, but you also need to understand this. This is all basically checks and balances. This is give and take. And you're going to have to sacrifice some of your viewscape to get some of that stuff in here for you to use. That's also part of this discussion. Okay? Yes, sir.
2 questions. The first one is, when you talk to the RPG representatives, one of the primary arguments that they'll throw out there is that the power stations that will go in next to the data centers will actually help to improve our overall electrical grid because of how they're hooking those up into the total network. So I guess how accurate is that argument compared to the actual strain
that's a wonderful
that these may
question,
put on the
because
system?
I'm going to tell you this. Under HB 15 provisions, they're building that for on-site use. It's going to be used for them. If they're making that statement, you need to ask them this. Well, that's great. In what time frame is that going to be transferred over for utility and community use? What are you going to do with regard to interconnection and local distribution upgrades to accommodate that power generation that can be used here in Waseon? And how much is that going to cost us? That needs to be part of that particular conversation too, because yeah, you're going to be asked to fit some of that particular bill. I've seen some pieces of legislation that we're going to do all this stuff within a 25-year time period. At the end of 25 years, we're going to transfer it over for public utility use so people in the community can use it. Well, that's great. Let's also take a look basically at your decommissioning schedule and your payment schedule that you've done here. And I'm going, it's always a 30-year time block, but you're talking about 25 years. What's happening in that 5 years when you do the transfer? Who's going to be paying for the last of the fees and different things for that? It gets very nebulous in that discussion very quick. So you need to ask those questions. Well, that's great. What are you going to pay for? When is it going to be paid? And how is it going to be connected to benefit me at low cost? Okay?
Then the second question would be, the next level for AI is to go into quantum computing, and we can be seeing that as soon as 2030. How does that affect these mega sites in terms of, do they expand even more? Do they get decommissioned sooner? I guess there's just a lot of implications.
Yeah, you need to ask those questions because I'm going to tell you this. None of these basically are built without taking a look at planned expansion and growth and asking them, as our need for computerization increases, how is this particular brick and mortar area going to be expanded to accommodate those particular consumer demands? What's it going to cost, and what's going to be the impact of this community? And should that also be built into the permit that we're talking about right now? Because in power siting, it is. Okay? But no, very good questions. Matter of fact, how much did I say I was going to pay you to ask that question?
So
yes, I mean, she's got over here, then you. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned something about building permits already issued. And would they be permitted to start the building before all this infrastructure and permits and stuff is in place?
I'm going to tell you this, my friend, that's something you're going to want to ask, because some permits are easier to obtain from others. And if they're talking and working with county and township and city government about the brick and mortar place they're going to do this, that's rather relative or easy to do. You need to ask the question. If the permit is granted for construction, what about the other permits for all the utility infrastructure to support that? That's going to take 48 to 60 months.
Yeah, see, because I think of this Aqua Bounty and Pioneer. You know, they built the structure before they had everything in place, and they're still fighting, as I understand, still fighting for power lines and water rights and whatnot. And so it's just, you know, going on. And they meanwhile have this.
Being speculative is huge in this industry. As a matter of fact, one of the questions you need to ask is, when this developer comes here, you know, you're a nice guy, but we have a lot of pressing questions, and I want to talk to the person who's going to own the metal, which means this is going to be their facility. It's built for them. They're going to be here for a minimum of 25 to 30 years running it. They're going to be in our community. You're a nice guy. You're a nice developer. You're a nice field agent. I would like to talk to them, please. Now, some of those folks are going to be able to tell you, great, we'll bring them. And others are going to say, I got a problem. Because you're going to find out some of this stuff is being done very speculatively in the hopes they're going to find someone to buy a portfolio once all the permits are together in the one file. And others are hiring folks for land procurement, utilities, those things going forward. Identifying who your ultimate business partner is going to be, because I see this as a partnership between the community and the company, identifying, being able to talk to them directly is going to be huge. Okay? I hope I helped you some there. You've got a question, go ahead.
So going along with what Zach was saying about RGP targeting Northwest Ohio, they want to make us the mega data center capital of the entire world, is what they're saying. And they specifically like the farmland. So they want the farmland, they want the aquifers, everything that we have. Is there anything that we can do to protect and focus on just the farmland, that we want it to stay farmland?
Yes, because now you know why, when we talked about these utility proceedings, farmland preservation, all that is part and parcel of those permits.
Have they ever denied a permit in a rural area on farmland, or do they always get it?
Nope. This technology is going to be interesting to see what happens. Not AI technology, but all the on-site technology that they're going to use for power siting. But there have been power siting projects that have been denied because of its impact basically to agricultural ground and its impact basically to a local community. Okay? Which means, and I'll tell you this, those people really had their argument down to a T.
Can you tell us who they were so we can contact them?
Yeah, send me an email. I'll send you a list of people you might want to talk to. Okay? As a matter of fact, I'll even do you better than that. I'll send you the attorneys that they worked with.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you.
Because some of those folks might not want to talk to you because they're still in litigation.
We talked once at the
did we?
beginning of all this.
Okay.
You were the one that I talked to you quickly and you said to table it. And I was writing
that was you.
furiously.
Oh my gosh, yes. All right.
I almost had a heart attack. I was writing so fast, everything that you
I remember that.
Yes.
Now, you're the one that lives in Michigan, right? Or you're the
I used to be.
Michigan?
I used to. Yes.
Oh my God. Come here. Give me a hug. Yeah, we had a conversation last week, and I told her, I said, you understand this type of power generation project technically and legally doesn't exist in the state of Ohio. And you went, what? Knowledge is power. It's what you know and how you use it. I heard you went very well at your meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Of course, I got some people now who want to shoot me, but oh, what the heck. Yeah, I can. Any other questions? Oh my gosh, yes.
I know, I'm so embarrassed.
You're fine. Oh my gosh,
So
you're asking very good
just
questions.
because you're dealing with this across the whole state, I'm just curious. So this particular area, property, it has the pipeline going through it.
Right.
So, speculation that they're going to build an on-site power plant. But just like within the last 2 weeks, there's like 75 acres of land that's been leased to Bear Peak Power out of Colorado. It's a solar company, but they also do the BESS. Is that pretty common that these data centers have both the gas and the solar?
Yes, because they're going to have a diversified energy portfolio feeding them. Natural gas, wind, solar. They're going to do also backup storage of power, a number of things with regard to that. Also, please remember this, some of that is legal, some of that is not with regard to development. And it's interesting too that, again, it leads into the question we just talked about 10 minutes ago. Speculation is absolutely huge. It's got to be rather challenging to find out. You have people who are developing projects and different things, hoping to sell to a company in some way, shape, or form. The question is, are they being commissioned by a company or the developer to do that? Or are they doing that rather speculatively, hoping to sell a portfolio? That's a yeah, you have to ask this. You have to ask this. Yeah, you have to ask those questions. You do, because there are some, and I tell you, with AI, when you talk about pipelines, when you talk about oil and gas leases, when you talk about drilling projects in Marcellus and Utica, same pattern. There are some people basically who are developing projects that are right with the developer. The money's there. They're going to be there very long term. They're vertically integrated. And when you ask this, and there's others who are doing this very, very speculatively, that want to put a portfolio of permits or sightings together, hoping to sell it to somebody. You need to ask those questions. Is this being done speculatively, or is this being done with somebody who's going to be here very long term? Okay? And you're seeing that right now in a number of projects. And when those farmers call me about leasing, that's the first thing I say to them, is that ask that person basically who is going to own the metal.
I guess we're better of the two, because one of the first trustee meetings was a large group. Someone asked them who's funding this project, and they said that they couldn't divulge that information because of the NDA.
Because of what?
The NDA.
Oh, the non-disclosure agreement?
But they were asked, and they declined to share, so they couldn't. They also said they had no plans to. Yeah, well, they said they had no plans.
Just in your opinion, I'm assuming having an end user is worse than a speculative.
Yeah. If you have an end user, you know he's serious, because he's going to be here from beginning to end. He's going to develop this project, but he's also going to understand this. He is going to be your neighbor for a very long time. And if he works with you extremely well, it's going to be nice for him to be here. If he doesn't, it's not going to be very nice. That's one thing, the difference between the two. Speculators, I don't think they really care, because my focus is to get a portfolio of permits and things together and sell to somebody and walk away. I'm not going to be here at the end. A vertically integrated developer is going to be here. He is going to be your neighbor. His employees are going to live in this community. Their kids are going to go to that school over there. They're going to be playing ball with your kids and different things. You're going to be involved in a number of community-based activities. We need to be good neighbors. We need to take a look at that strategy, and you need to talk to them about that strategy. Okay? I hope I've helped with some of that. Yes, sir.
I just heard that this company from California just leased a large building in Wasion, and they're bringing in solar panels and storing them there.
Don't know anything about that, but is that perfectly legal? The answer is yes. And I'm going to tell you this, the amount of folks who want to do solar technology is absolutely huge. And the biggest problem basically right now is raw material and getting that basically to do it. Which means if they're able to do that, they probably have a good reason why, and you need to ask that particular question, or you need to confirm that's really what's going to happen at that building. It's amazing what is told to people. It's amazing what you read on this thing called the internet. Yes, sir.
Just, I guess to clarify, I've been working with a few others, and we did email one of the landowners that have an option purchase agreement with Iron Ridge, and they specifically asked if it was going to be used for solar, and we're told that it was not going to be used for solar. So just, I know a couple of the questions related to solar in this land, but
Okay.
I believe that was asked specifically. So
Oh, good.
figure that out.
Yes, sir.
So, in these other data centers that are actually under construction, how did the process work? Do they have the same issues that are happening here?
Yes.
Local officials do nothing about it. Options were committed, and basically the project was sold. And without much.
Let's take a look at it this way. What concerns you have in Wasion with regard to a development and a process here have happened in a number of other communities in Ohio and throughout the Midwest. This is nothing new or different. But having people understand, appreciate, this is my role and this is how I get involved in this process is huge. Some people have chosen to do that and others have not.
So do local county officials have the right to ask these developers what's going on?
Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. You're going to be in Washington in 48 hours. Your county farm bureau president is going to be at a briefing with the county commissioners. Have a national organization, my friend, and their legislative director is going to brief our members at their national headquarters in 48 hours. And their focus is this: if you want to get involved in this process, this is where the rubber hits the road, not at the federal level, not necessarily at the state level, but at the local level, because that's where the issues we're talking about here, that's where the impact is going to be. Keep good notes on that meeting. Okay?
Okay, my question.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
We keep talking about like the Rover pipeline and they're going to use that for natural gas. Well, there's also two 36-inch natural gas pipelines that run east to west. Are they allowed to build over the top of pipelines?
Not necessarily. It all depends with regard to this, because when you're talking about an interstate pipeline, that's going to be a FERC permit. If there is pipeline infrastructure that has to cross each other, there has to be a certain depth between the bottom of the infrastructure and top of the infrastructure, and at the intersection there has to be a distance between the two. Okay? It can be done, but there are very specific, depending on the size, diameter, pressure, and what is the pipe is carrying, there are rules basically for that at the federal level.
Because you can't even get near it to basically farm it or put tile. You can't have a tree growing within 20 feet of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are they going to put a mega data center over the top of this?
Well, they probably are not, but they're probably going to have that pipe very close to a spot where they can interconnect and bring it to the surface.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That's done all the time. Guys, you still okay on time? All right. I'm going with you. Gosh, we're already at 8 o'clock. My gosh, I started 2 hours ago. No.
We don't sleep.
You don't sleep? No. Hi, ma'am.
Quick question.
Quick answer.
Kind of a different approach, though. The world has changed a lot in the last couple of weeks, I guess.
Yes.
And from a security standpoint, both local and nationally, the presence of the energy and the data is going to change our security risk tremendously. How is that being looked at?
Well, you're going to have a lot of people, and I'm involved. Gosh, you should have been with me yesterday. Not yesterday, that was Sunday. I took the day off, thank God. But last week, because when you're talking about data use, data storage, it's become a national security issue. When you've talked about transmission of fuels and different things, it's national security, because the focus basically is this, is that yes, we want to become energy independent. To do that, we're going to have a number of pieces of infrastructure. We're going to have to be able to transport, store, generate a number of different energy sources simultaneously. We're going to have the infrastructure in place to take that generation or fuel from point A to point B. We're going to need to do that efficiently, effectively, with as much safety as possible. It's going to be tremendously expensive. Just to do the transmission refits over the next 10 years is going to be $30 billion in Ohio alone. It's going to be close to $1.4 trillion between now and the end of the 30s with doing those particular upgrades. How is it going to be paid for? Who is going to pay it? And how are we going to make sure basically that convenience, public need, and necessity and a permit is met, and the quality of life in Wasion basically remains the same or is enhanced. Welcome to my world. Welcome to power siting of the 21st century. I hope I helped you some there.
I know what has gone on in Ukraine. The areas that are targeted the most are the areas that are generating the things we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody's looking at that from a national standpoint.
Yeah, because remember this, if that happens here, that's where they're going to hit you first. Because you like the lights to be on, you like to have fuel for your car, you like to heat the house, you like to have the computer running, you're going to need all these particular services, you're going to need the generation and transmission lines to get stuff from point A to point B, and you're going to need to make it. And some of the first things they take a look at sabotaging is that infrastructure. Okay? Who's they? It can be internal or external. We just call them bad actors, let's put it that way. But no, I'm going to tell you this. We talk about utility upgrades. Yes, I do a number of I do a lot of discussion on those things with a number of folks at state and federal levels. When we've had local distribution stations in rural areas attacked, and literally attacked, because some people have tested what do we need to do and how quickly can we incapacitate a local distribution circuit, that has been done. There are places right now that if I had a grenade launcher or a hand grenade, I could probably stop transmission for a nice part of the state. You never thought about that because I tell you, much of this infrastructure was created in the 1930s and 40s when we didn't see that as a problem or an issue or a concern. We are now seeing this as such. And you're going to be involved in the upgrades for that type of security, and the cost is going to be done by us. Welcome to power signing again in the 21st century. Oh gosh, don't get me started. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
So I heard this afternoon that the House and the Ohio Senate were going to override a veto like DeWine did on sales tax for data centers and building them. Is there other things at the state? I agree, like you said, the local level is very important, but are there things at the state level that we need to be paying attention to because the state is pushing this on us to some extent? They're promoting us as well as RGP, like Zach said.
Right there. Get involved with that because you've just basically given the synopsis or description of why that House bill is being created to do that. And this is Evan Calico, who is part of our legislative team. I helped him and he prepped testimony and testified last week. You can see it on the Ohio channel, why we needed that committee. And much basically that you said is in his testimony. Now, how much did I say I was going to pay you to say that? Never mind. No, but you got some idea, but that's something you also want to take a look at because people are starting to seriously take a look at. We need to take a look at this a lot more holistically instead of a little piece at a time. Yes, sir.
Of the data centers that you've seen leave a town, what's the number one reason that they left?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I haven't seen one leave a town yet.
Or those infra-construction that can't really
Well, Intel basically is this, because I live 20 minutes from the Intel site. Has to do basically with their balance sheet. They're an international company. They have a number of expenses and different things, and they basically said this: we have to pay for some other things off on other projects, and we're delaying the completion of this project from 2027 to 2030. I'm going to tell you this: the cranes are still there. Work is being done, but work is being done at a much slower pace, and that's the projected schedule when they're going to be done. I'm going to tell you this also: in that particular area, there's a lot of warehouses and a lot of tech centers and a lot of other buildings with familiar names on it that are up and operational, and there are 3 switch yards for electricity. They're all 60 acres in size, and I can stand at one point and see all 3 of them. That's what's going on. Pardon? Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, we should talk about the Marysville Loop project someday. But no, but that's part of that process too.
So if they don't have enough electricity from their generators, can they pull from the other grids then too? And we would be left set with no electricity?
That's a very good question, because I'm going to tell you this. That is going to be one of the things you're going to have to talk about. If you're doing a power pole of that size or a draw, you're going to see the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission working with, it's either going to be Mid-American Transmission or American Transmission, the AP affiliate or the First Energy affiliate, with regard to upgrading transmission lines to be able to meet that particular power load. And that's gonna take a while to do.
Isn't that what HB 427 is about?
HB 427?
Yeah.
Partially, yes. That's also part of the discussion. You also have passage of HB 15 because they're saying we don't have to worry about those particular types of things because we're going to do our own power generation. It's going to be large enough to do what we need to do on site. There's a lot of discussion going forward. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of proceedings are going to be before a number of regulatory authorities on this going forward. Stay tuned for further developments. Time for one more question, and you've got it.
So everything you've shared tonight and all of these questions and questions you've suggested be asked in a nutshell.
Yeah.
What are the next steps for trustees, for citizens, the Citizens for Responsible Development Group, for other members of our school or village council, because you've given a lot of suggestions.
Yes,
for
I tell,
legal counsel.
like I've said this.
How does everybody come together and get their ducks in a row and get prepared for next steps?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I said I don't want to basically have you drink from the fire hose, but you can see how how complex some of these things are. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't have a definite answer with regard to that, but I would say this. The next time you have a chance to talk to your folks in the kitchen table, compare your notes with regard to that, because that's going to be how we're going to create our strategy going forward. What do we need to investigate? How do we need to get engaged and support the township trustees? How should we talk basically with the county commissioner? If you have the ability to talk to your congressional candidates, you should have some pressing questions for them on this. I'm going to leave that up to you.
I think we'd be more powerful and get more done if everybody was working together rather than if we're doing this and
I understand, but that's something, and that's something that you here at Waseon will probably want to have to talk about.
Actually, Waseon on too many more times.
First of all, well, I'm going to tell you this. I'm real glad we're not in Putnam and Paulding County because I'd have some real problems there. I'm sorry.
This is Blue Street country.
I stand corrected with the community here. I'm giving you some things to chew on. I'm giving you some things to take a look at. When you're ready to take it to that step, give me a call. We can talk about it again, okay? I really appreciate your time. If you need anything else, where am I at? There, that's me. I'm glad we're not in Howard and Danville, or I would have been shot. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dale. Well, I guess we have some things to work on. Based on our speculation, anyway, of what we think may or may be coming. So, you're all welcome to stick around. We got our business part of our meeting to do yet, the more fun part. So, don't everybody leave at once.
You're welcome. If you have any questions, just give me a call. Sure. Oh,